Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice, 'cause I speak of the pompatus of love. People talk about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong, doing you wrong. Well, don't you worry, baby, don't worry, 'cause I'm right here, right here, right here, right here at home. 'Cause I'm a picker, I'm a grinner, I'm a lover, and I'm a sinner. I play my music in the sun. I'm a joker, I'm a smoker, I'm a midnight toker. I give my loving on the run.
It was on this day in 1990 that song went to number one on the UK music charts. And I know you're thinking to yourself, hang on, Farwell, like, could you please, if it's not too much trouble, would you mind some accuracy on the show? I know that the Steve Miller Band and the Joker was a hit from the 1970s, not 1990. Well, you're right, as always, absolutely right. But it became a number one on this day in 1990, 16 years after its first release. Why did it take 16 years for the Joker to go to number one? Because it appeared in a television commercial for Levi's jeans, and that catapulted the Steve Miller Band to number one with the Joker on this day in 1990. This day is Monday, September the 15th. A very good morning to you. I hope it was a great weekend. I want to fill you in on mine because my weekend was so significant that this show will truly, literally, never be the same again. That's it. I will never do another show as a single man. The last show I did, believe it or not, as a single man was last Wednesday. You probably know I have long referred to my beloved as just that because we've been together for a very long time, more than 10 years. But we finally decided, okay, I finally took my head out of my arse and decided that this should be made much more official. And believe it or not, I came to work last Wednesday morning, did the show, had some conversation with you, and then took my little derriere with my head now out of it over to Waterloo Park, where we made it official. So yes, I worked on the same day that I got married. But you see, my beloved, because she's been around for a while, she's kind of used to this. She teased me a little bit. I said, what am I going to do? Go to the breakfast buffet at the Rippers? Come on. I came to work because working is kind of what I do. For better or for worse, that's what I did. And we had a lovely ceremony with family and friends present, just a small little thing that was very meaningful and very significant to us, and it became official as we are now the Farwells. We are a plural all of a sudden. And then we played for the next many days tourists in our own town. We spent a night at the Walper. We had cocktails at the Grand Trunk. What else? We had a weekend dinner at the Metro. Who doesn't love some schnitzel from the Metro? We did brunch at the Charcoal. We attended a couple of community events, one for Ronald McDonald House Charities, another for the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario, or POGO, which supports families whose children have cancer. And just so you know, community events are kind of the sorts of things that my beloved and I do a lot of, and I get a whole bunch of credit for showing up to a whole bunch of different places. She's doing as much, if not more, oftentimes finding the places for us to go and be in attendance, because we do love all of the great work that's happening in this community. We want to be a part of it. So it was just a lovely little extended weekend for us, playing tourist as I said, in our own town. And we capped it off. And this made it extra special. A huge thank you, a massive thank you to Robin and Bruce. Whoever you are, all I know is your name. But you did something that just made the end of our long weekend that started with our wedding last Wednesday afternoon a little bit extra special. As you might also know, I stole my beloved from the streets of Preston. She's a Preston girl at heart, but I dragged her north of the 401 into Kitchener, where I was born and raised. But she will always be a Preston girl at heart. And when we first met and were spending considerable time in Preston, where she had a place, if you're from that area of Cambridge, you know all about the Fiddle. And we would go to the Fiddle, just a beautiful neighborhood pub, frequently. It was a go-to spot for us. And so we went there again last evening to enjoy dinner together, go back to our roots sort of thing, and enjoyed a dinner at the Fiddle. And wouldn't you know, the server comes over as we had asked for our bill, and she said, Are you the guy from 570 News Radio? And I just chuckled, and we had a little laugh, and I said, yes, I am. She said, another couple wanted to buy your drinks tonight. And all I know, they had already left the restaurant, so I couldn't thank them in person. I didn't see anybody, looking at me sideways through the evening at the Fiddle last night, but I learned enough that it was Robin and Bruce who bought our drinks at the Fiddle last night. What a lovely gesture. Absolutely, positively, entirely unnecessary, but ding, dang it, gosh darn it, I sure do appreciate stuff like that, and it was really nice. I'll drink for free any day, you know that, but it was just a nice little finish to a great weekend for us as a family, and thank you for your continued generosity. It seems that everywhere we go, we meet smiling faces and people who want to talk about things that they're doing or nice things that they think we do. And it really is a great community to be a part of. And whether you're buying drinks when we're out for dinner or not, we love seeing you. So thank you very much to Robin and Bruce for just that little extra special element to our weekend together. And that's it now. I bring you the perspective from now on of a married man. All right, let's get to the Farwell Show 5 for this. Should I call it the Farwell's Show 5 for this morning? I don't know if my beloved really wants to be dragged that far into this mess. But anyway, number one, Parliament is back in session today. Prime Minister Mark Carney has signaled the fall budget's deficit will be bigger than last year's, partly because of U.S. tariffs. He has not given a specific dollar figure for the projected deficit, but some sources suggest it could be as high as $90 billion. Budget issues will likely be a key topic when Carney squares off against Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre for the first time in the daily question period. Poilievre told his caucus yesterday that he's ready to get to work after winning a by-election last month in Alberta.
We will oppose things we're against, support things we're for, but we will also propose solutions to the problems Liberals have created.
Number two, speaking of Liberals, but provincial Liberals, Bonnie Crombie says she's resigning as the leader of Ontario's Liberal Party as soon as a new leader is elected. Crombie made the announcement yesterday after receiving a weak show of support at the party's annual general meeting. The party will hold its third leadership race since 2020 to replace Crombie as leader. Remember, they had to have a race to replace Kathleen Wynne for Stephen Del Duca, then a race to replace Del Duca with Crombie, and now it'll be the race to replace Bonnie Crombie. Neither Del Duca nor Crombie. Did Del Duca? I don't think he won a seat either, did he? So I don't think either of the previous Ontario Liberal leaders have held a seat at Queen's Park. Number three, on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, local teacher federations, education workers, trade unions, and MPPs, the whole ding-dang lot of them, holding a media conference today at Elizabeth Ziegler Public School in Waterloo. Students from that school have been shuttled to new schools, including Sandown, because structural issues forced the closure of Elizabeth Ziegler. Today's media conference is calling on the Ontario government to urgently invest in repairing and modernizing schools to ensure safe, healthy learning environments for students. Number 4, Kitchener athlete Foster Malik is on the track in Tokyo competing in the men's 1,500-meter semifinals at the World Athletics Championship. Malik made it to today's semi with a 6th-place finish in qualifying on the weekend. He finished 4th in his heat this morning, meaning he now qualifies for the final. This is Foster Malik's international running debut, the athlete from Kitchener. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, The Pit has won Best Drama Series at the Emmys, with Noah Weil taking Best Actor in a Drama. The Studio set a record for most wins by a comedy series in a single season. Netflix's Adolescence dominated the limited series categories with 6 victories, including Best Limited Series, and Seth Rogen, the co-creator of The Studio, personally collected 4 Emmys. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 15th of September. Quick break. Important traffic note for you to hear about. And then we'll come back and take your phone calls with the morning wake-up call here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every day we fire this show up at 9 a.m. It runs for 4 full hours. Plenty of time to engage in conversation. And our phone lines are open from the get-go. 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. Let's get to the phones on our morning wake-up call and hear from you, starting with Mary, Farwell's Force member number 1. Good morning.
Good morning, and congratulations on your latest, greatest event.
Absolutely my greatest, no question.
And you, the weather was absolutely gorgeous.
It was wonderful.
And I wanted to say this to you before you got married, but...
Uh-oh, is it a warning? Because now it's too late, Mary. Okay.
I don't care what anybody says, and you love each other, and you live together, but something magical happens when you say those vows. Did it happen to you?
I think it did, actually. I really do. But I've been warned. I mean, my beloved made it clear. Things better not change. So I can't be too excited yet, I don't think.
No. But I have to say, it is different.
It is.
Even though you're committed, yeah.
It was the strangest part about all of it, to be honest with you, Mary, because we've been together for so long. But formalizing it like this, yes, absolutely, left an impression for sure.
Yes. Well, anyway, congratulations.
Thank you.
To you and your beloved.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Good to hear from you this morning. Jersey Bill, good morning to you.
Yes, I say congratulations as well, and I hope that the joy and stability your relationship brings you remains.
Thank you.
In the future. Of course, unfortunately, I really have to go a little negative now in terms of what's going on in the news, and it seems that everything just collapsing together in the States between the unfortunate assassination of that particular talker, Mr. Kirk, and then how it looks as though nothing seems to be getting better. My wife is concerned for relatives in the States and their different status that they've had as immigrants. The situation's already seriously affected a relative of mine who's lost his job due to a local government cutback, which could be traced back to what's happened in Washington. And my wife doesn't want to travel to the States anymore, and it sort of limits me as well because of conditions there. I think, comparing it to what's going on in Canada, I hope that this session of the Parliament works well, and certainly the Canadian government seems to be a heck of a lot more stable than in the States. I would also caution that they should continue to be very, very welcoming to immigrants. Just in my occasional interest in tennis, just look at Miss Mboko and Mr. Alger Al-Salim, I believe that's his name, how well they did, and they did it because as immigrants, they're disciplined, and they're the best. They turned into the best that Canada had to offer the world. That's what I feel about that.
All right, Billy, appreciate the call, and I would invite you to stay tuned, as we say in the radio game, because just after the 9:30 news this morning, we will be talking more about the Charlie Kirk assassination and really what it means from here when we see political violence at this level. I've got some thoughts too, and we'll get into that conversation just after the 9:30 news. Paul is with us on the phone this morning too. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, and of course, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
You know, I almost ended up at the Firkin last night myself.
Oh, wouldn't that have been ironic? You and I are still going there. I have not forgotten. I just, had a few things to tend to, a few matters to take care of. Yeah,
there's things more important than the likes of me. But,
you said it. You said it.
I just want to say, the end of this month. Had I not lost my wife, it would have been 49 years, and I hope you have that and more.
I certainly hope so too, Paul. Appreciate that.
Yeah, all the best.
Thank you.
I'm going to hold you to that beer. It's got to be soon.
I promise it's going to happen. You got it. All right, Paul. Thank you. I've gotten to know Paul a little bit through my time on this show, and in fact, when we were sitting, my beloved and I, at the Fiddle last night. See, Paul calls it the Firkin. It's the Fiddle and Firkin. We've always called it the Fiddle. Anyway, or is it the Firkin and Fiddle? I think it's the Fiddle and Firkin. Regardless, if you're in Preston, you know. And when we were sitting there enjoying our dinner last evening, I mentioned that I'm due to have a beer with Paul. Just sit down and chat. And if it's one thing that has always been true, it is his unwavering devotion to his wife, who he lost sooner than anybody should have to. So, and I know Paul's not alone in that, but I know how he still carries that flame. So I find that inspiring, and I not just hope for, but expect the same for my beloved and I. Gary, Farwell's Force, member number 41. Good morning.
Good morning, buddy. How are you?
Top shelf. How are you?
I'm doing okay for a Monday morning, but the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. But just wanted to do a quick call. I got up this morning in my routine and had my coffee and went on Facebook and came across your post, and it put a big smile on my face to see that lovely picture of you and your lovely better half.
You see how much she was smiling, Gary? I think I had her fooled on Wednesday afternoon last week.
She's probably looking at you going, okay, this is for real, right? Like there's no hidden secrets or anything like that.
That's right. That's right.
I love the picture, Mike, but just wanted to say, bud, congratulations, and I wish you both nothing but the best in the years to come. And the only one thing I could always just say to everyone is never go to bed angry, and just keep the communication and love each other unconditionally. And she's a lucky man, and I'm sure she's, you're both very lucky to have each other. That's for sure.
All right, Gary, really appreciate that. Thank you, and I'll take the advice to heart. It's a lot of rules all of a sudden. By the way, I should point out, we're going to just keep this theme rolling all week, because who can be cranky? You think I could actually complain about... Okay, I'm going to complain about things this week, but mark it down now. Start thinking now for our All Request Friday this week, because I'm going to be here on Friday, you see, so I'm planning ahead. But we're going to play your favorite love songs on Friday during All Request Friday. So if you've got a fave, let me know via email to mike@570news.com, or when you call in to talk to us about issues, or you just want to call in and make that request, let Devin or Jen know when they answer the phone what love song you would like to hear some of during our All Request Friday this week. Rockin' Ronnie, good morning, my friend.
Fardy, how are you?
Weebs, I'm doing great. How are you?
Are you still the same as before?
I think I am. My left hand's just a little heavier, Ronnie.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah,
eh?
I think so.
I hope she allows you to go to the Ranger games and do the play-by-play.
Allows, Ronnie. Come on. She's looking forward to it. She likes her Friday nights quiet that way.
You got her trained right.
She's got me trained right.
Yeah, we'd never want to see you miss doing that, that's for sure.
Not a chance.
And she should really appreciate you, too, because I don't know her very well, but I know you quite well, and you're a kind of a famous fixture around here.
Settle down now, Ronnie. Settle down. Yeah, I'm a lot. Let's be honest here. I am a lot to put up with.
Credit is due. Anyway, enjoy your life, and I'm sure it'll be great. And keep cheering for them Kitchener Rangers and doing that good job you do at the auditorium. And we're ready to hit it off on Friday night, home opener.
Can't wait. Bring it on. Let's go.
You ought to believe it. But I was there the other night, and it was a good feeling to be in them seats again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, take care.
Thanks, Ronnie. Great to hear from you today. On that note of our Kitchener Rangers, yes, Ronnie mentions it. Home opener, season opener, Friday night versus Brantford. That means we are on the air with the broadcast. Pre-game coverage with our new guy, Josh Piercy, and I will start at 6:30 Friday evening. That'll be our first game of the season because we don't do preseason games. The coaches' show will return this Friday morning at 10:30 with Rangers head coach UC Ahokas, so be ready for that. And today is the day that the Rangers are hosting media. Now, I'm going to be here with you, but don't worry. That new guy, also one of our reporters from the 570 News Center, Josh Piercy, is going to be attending the event that the Rangers are hosting as they show off the new digs. They've got that new media room put together. They've got some improvements made to the dressing room for the players, all kinds of things. So we're going to have a reporter there. You'll hear all about it. You'll see some pictures on our website, kitchener.citynews.ca. And we're all getting set for another Kitchener Rangers season. It is going to be a dandy. Could I, if I were to be so bold as to shamelessly promote this little podcast thing that I do called the OHL podcast? We've done our predictions for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. I might have picked the Kitchener Rangers to finish first. I'm not sure. You just have to listen to the OHL podcast, not just this week, but you know what? Every week throughout the season, you can find it wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and maybe the OHL podcast will become one of those favorites. Okay, we must move along. We'll get into the news of the day. Billy alluded to it earlier, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Could this embolden more political violence? That's the question we will explore as we dive into our conversations together today on The Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
I think we need more moral clarity right now. I hear all the time that words are violence. Words are not violence. Violence is violence. And there is one person responsible for what happened here. And that person is now in custody and will be charged soon and will be held accountable. And yet, all of us have an opportunity right now to do something different. We can return violence with violence. We can return hate with hate. And that's the problem with political violence, is it metastasizes, because we can always point the finger at the other side. And at some point, we have to find an off-ramp, or it's going to get much, much worse.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
That is Spencer Cox, who's the governor of Utah, the state in which the assassination of Charlie Kirk happened. In fact, it was on a campus in Utah where Charlie Kirk's life was ended by a bullet from a sniper's rifle last Wednesday. Ari Perliger is the director of security studies and a professor of criminology and justice studies at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and makes time for our show this morning. Ari, thank you for the time. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you.
As somebody who is an expert in the history of political assassinations, what do you make of the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
So I think there's a few interesting aspects to it. First of all, I think that it's important to remember that this is an assassination of someone who is not an elected official. If you're looking at the recent wave of political assassinations, most of them focus on people who actually had an actual role, a formal role within the political system. This is not. And I think this is a reflection of the expansion of the political discourse outside of the government, and how figures like Charlie Kirk have, in many cases, much more influence, much more impact than elected official. And in many ways, he really symbolized the new path of the conservative movement and made him a target for extremists. The second thing, I think it's important to know that this was an assassination on a campus. And I think it's another reflection of how our campuses are becoming spaces of contention, of violence, of disruption, rather than a place where people can actually exchange ideas, can actually engage in debate. And we've seen that in the last several years, where basically campuses, there's no space really for actual debate, for actual conversation, for actual exchange of ideas, but they are becoming more and more hostile environment where people just, focusing on their own performative political exercises rather than actually engaging with, people who think differently. So I think those are two elements that I think reflect the broader, patterns in what we see in the last couple of years.
Your point about this assassination happening on a campus is not lost on me for sure, because even on this side of the border, we hear about campuses as being places, critics will say, of indoctrination as opposed to critical thinking, sharing of ideas, etc. How do we go about turning the temperature down on those campuses?
First of all, I think that, we need to acknowledge that, campuses needs to reflect and to rethink about the processes and the dynamics that occurred within them in the last few years. That means the growing sense of significant constituencies that don't feel welcome on campuses, that feel that they are being marginalized on campuses, that feel that their views are not part of the discourse on campuses. And I think that campuses needs to find ways to empower different types of students, different type of constituencies to be able to be part of this kind of campus discussion. The second thing I think is that, with all due respect, I think campuses cannot be basically a lawless space. I think that in order to have an actual debate, actual discussion, we need to have some kind of rules. And when we see that campuses are basically being occupied or taking hostages, I think that doesn't serve the goal of making campuses a place where people can actually debate, exchange ideas, and engage in a really nuanced discourse, and not just, performing for their own sake with zero interest with engaging with political rivals or ideological rivals. And I think it's also a reflection of a growing sense of some people in academia that many parts of academia are not as tolerant as they argue, are not as inclusive as they argue, and more focusing on policing others rather than being inclusive.
This particular act of political violence, unfortunately, does not stand alone. There's been a recent wave in the United States, including an assassination attempt on Donald Trump during the most recent election campaign. What do you make, Ari, of this latest wave of political violence in the United States?
I think it's an extension of the political polarization. I think when both sides perceive the other side as illegitimate, as focusing on language that delegitimizing the other side, that portray political rivals as a threat, as an evil, I think it's not surprising that we see that. I think that too many political leaders really are focusing on the political competition, on some kind of a zero-sum game, that every policy of the other side is the end of the world, is an existential threat, it's a threat to the nation or a threat to constitutional rights. I think both sides have in this kind of a spiral where everything that the other side do it's catastrophic, it's existential, and so on. And that's not the case. And that's really prevent any effort to engage in bipartisan, collaborative politics. I think also the fact that, the discourse itself is becoming more and more toxic, that sends signals to their constituencies and erode the trust in the democratic system. You know, when you are always present your political rivals as people who are exploiting the system, people who are destroying the system, that eventually erode people's trust in the political system. And when that happens, extremists take the law into their own hands.
We heard Governor Cox in the clip we played just to start this conversation, Ari, talk about words not being violence. Violence is violence, but words are not violence. And even still, in the days after, the hours really after Charlie Kirk's assassination, there was commentary from high-ranking political leaders about the radical left or the extreme right. How much does this rhetoric play into the increased temperature in United States politics right now?
Yes, I completely agree with him. I think that, you know, we need to understand that people having different views is not offensive. It's not an attack on you. It's not a threat on you. And I think that in the last couple of decades, I think we created an environment or fostered an environment where basically any kind of a difference of opinions are perceived as some kind of crisis. That should not be the case. I think people should be able to handle different views, even if those views are very controversial or extremely opposite to your views. But I think that's the failure of us as educators, the failure of our leaders, that they basically facilitated an environment where every disagreement is being perceived as some kind of an offense or something that people cannot really handle. Well, people should grow up and be able to handle different of opinions and understand that if someone disagrees with you, it's not offensive, it's not violence, and there's no need to police everyone around you, and so on. So I think I completely agree with him. And I think too many young people these days cannot really comprehend and handle the fact that there's people who disagree with them vehemently, and they feel challenged, and they feel that, you know, that's a direct threat against them.
I'll reference Governor Cox again because he talked about finding the off-ramp here, lest this political violence metastasize. What is a way forward here, Ari?
I think we need to promote and support behaviors and politics which actually try to be constructive, try to cross the aisle, but try to promote bipartisanship. And I think that it's about time to challenge politicians to be more focusing on actually producing policies rather than talking politics. And I think we as a public, and I think political leaders themselves, beyond, you know, being more conscious about the language they use, I think it's about time that both parties and the American public will incentivize those politicians who are willing to work together. Eventually, the only way to convince the public that the other side is not evil and is not the enemy is by collaborating with the other side. So we need to promote politicians who are willing to, promote policies across the aisle that are willing to seek consensus rather than always engage in performative politics just to satisfy their own bases.
Such an important conversation. Ari, I really appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Ari Perliger is the Director of Security Studies and a Professor of Criminology and Justice Studies at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, sharing his perspective on not only what may have led to this increase in political violence in the United States, but also what that off-ramp might look like. And I can't help but think, and this has been on my mind an awful lot, this idea that Ari shared of sharing more ideas, being willing to listen to the other without taking offense, without dismissing them as a voice that's irrelevant or unnecessary. And I keep coming back to fringe minority. Do you remember that from the highest office in our land a couple of years ago? And when you take a group of people that clearly you disagree with and describe them in that way, I don't know that you could other them any more than we did in that one instance. I've got more thoughts on this, particularly around a way forward and some uncomfortable questions we have to ask. But I'll get into that and open the phone lines to hear from you on the assassination of Charlie Kirk and what way forward that you see from this as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
I think also the fact that, the discourse itself is becoming more and more toxic, that sends signals to their constituencies and erode the trust in the democratic system. When you are always present your political rivals as people who are exploiting the system, people who are destroying the system, that eventually erodes people's trust in the political system. And when that happens, extremists take the law into their own hands.
Ari Perliger, Director of Security Studies and a Professor of Criminology and Justice Studies at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, joining our show this morning to talk about how political violence and further acts of it can be emboldened following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's go to the phones here from you. Dallas, good morning.
Yes, sir. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. First off, I'd like to send off my congratulations, such as multiple other people have.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Well, I tell you something, it's been just over a year since I lost my dearly beloved, or 25 years, and I hope that with any good luck, you folks got lots of years ahead of you.
Thank you. We look forward to it.
So anyways, on the topic, I don't know, I've been listening to this stuff for a long time. They have essentially, right now, in my impression, a civil war brewing down there. And this time it's going to be a very dangerous one in the fact that, as opposed to the first one where they just met up in a field and shot each other, this time it's concerning. I agree with everything that your guest said, 100%. How they're going to do that down there, I don't know. And it's unfortunate because, they talk about the radical left and the radical right. Well, it's the radical right that's driving it right now. And we all know that.
Well, I don't know, to be honest with you, that it is, Dallas. I think we've got extreme elements on each side, and that's where we really start to get bogged down. There's a so-called radical left and a so-called extreme right, and we are as polarized as ever. But your point about the United States generally is well taken, because this was a model of stability and security, economically and otherwise, for generations, and we're seeing a very different America of late. Pat, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike. First off, congratulations on this huge milestone in your life.
Thank you.
Welcome. Obviously, Charlie Kirk's assassination is a tragedy, and I think it's this flashing warning of red in our society's rot. A lot of people celebrated his murder on social media, and I'm not necessarily referring to individuals on, the fringes. I'm referring to politicians or professors or social workers or, people in positions of trust and influence. And for me, it's really clear evidence how society, and by society, what I mean is this, things that influence us, like the mainstream media or social media or politicians or universities, we've created this mental scaffolding in the last maybe 15, 20 years that seems to justify violence against groups of people that we perceive are somehow existential threats to us. And there's some polling around this, and, 48% of liberals say that murdering someone like Elon Musk is justified. Or
where did you get that polling from?
I'll share it with you on maybe your X account. I don't have the reference in front of me, but I'm more than happy to email it to you or share it to you.
Yeah, because that's a pretty extreme take from a poll. It is.
It is very scary, and it is not a fringe poll. It's something that's been referenced in a lot of different media sources of late, and so I'm happy to share it with you. And so my point is when, media or algorithms promote that Charlie Kirk is, somehow a Nazi or a fascist or a far-right operative, it's hard for individuals who obviously have mental issues to kind of not come to the conclusion that they have to take matters in their own hands. And so we have to, do more of the things that Charlie Kirk did. He literally went on universities and had respectful or generally respectful conversations with individuals.
He did, and I'll give you that. But I push back a little bit on this idea that people with mental issues are taken to or swayed by or driven to the violence. I'm not sure I would just lump it together all in one basket like that. Algorithms is an excellent point, though, and the point I think that I want to make in all of this, and it's an uncomfortable conversation or question to ask of ourselves, but the reality is, however distasteful you may have thought Charlie Kirk's viewpoints were, he had millions and millions of followers. And I think the question, as opposed to othering those millions as a fringe minority not worth our time or attention, I think we have to ask ourselves the hard question about why so many people, particularly young men, were attracted to that message. How are we leaving that demographic behind in our communities today? I think that's an uncomfortable yet fair question to ask in all of this. Mike, Farwell's Force member number 37. I'm down to about 45 seconds.
Hey, Mike. As you know, I live up on Lake Huron here, and I often hear U.S. radio stations, right? And the whataboutism is unbelievable. I'm afraid of the United States. Again, it's going to enter another period of civil and social unrest because of people can't respect each other's opinion. And if you go all the way back to the 50s, there's the Puerto Rican independence bombings, Malcolm X, JFK, RFK, the assassination attempts on Gerald Ford, the Oklahoma City bombings, assassination attempts on Ronald Reagan, the Minnesota law thing, lawmakers being gunned down. It's both on the left and the right, Mike, and I don't know how you're going to turn the temperature down on.
I know, and I got to cut you there. I don't know how we're turning the temperature down either, but I hope we can. And let's keep engaging in honest and fruitful conversation. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
This is where today's topics turn into today's talking points. It's local and it's Democratic radio at its finest. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
We know that critical minerals and mining are industries of national interest in and of themselves because they can reinforce our prosperity, build our security, diversify our markets, and advance reconciliation. And to these ends, we are referring the McKinvena Bay Foreign Copper Mine in east central Saskatchewan and the Red Chris Copper and Gold Mine in northwestern BC. Relatedly, we're also tasking the office to begin close consideration of the proposed new Northwest Critical Conservation Corridor.
The Mike Farwell Show continues
on 570 News Radio.
And that, of course, Prime Minister Mark Carney at a media conference in Edmonton last week where he announced 5, quote, nation-building projects for approval. These will come from the newly created Major Projects Office. Phase 2 of LNG Canada in Kitimat, British Columbia, is one of those projects, as is the Darlington new nuclear project in Clarington, Ontario. Critics have said already that this list is merely an acceleration of projects that are already in place, and it's nothing really all that ambitious. But let's get into it a little bit further. Blaine Haggart is a professor of political science at Brock University, joins us for a conversation. Blaine, good morning.
Good morning to you.
What is your initial reaction to the list we heard last week from the Prime Minister?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with the critics that you mentioned on this, is that it's really less of nation building and more kind of a housekeeping exercise of kind of almost re-announcing projects that were already in some process of being underway.
What would something more ambitious look like, Blaine? Where could the Prime Minister go with this?
Well, I mean, with these projects, nowhere, because it's kind of like the status quo, and in a sense, it's kind of also looking back. It seems to be an attempt to return to the 1800s, where Canada was basically built on resource extraction, as opposed to kind of where the future is, which is manufacturing and the knowledge economy. But there's lots of things that the government could have considered. Like, there's no big swings here. There's no national power grid. There's no youth infrastructure core. There's no national retrofit to the country with, maybe cheaper than ever solar panels and state-of-the-art aerofiltration that we could have. There's no national digital strategy to counter or replace the negative influence that Meta and X, as well as Google, are having on our communication systems. There's no national railway system. I mean, even the Toronto-Quebec City train corridor, which is kind of like maybe coming down the road in the future, that was announced by Justin Trudeau. So there's lots of things that we could do, but there's nothing coming from this government that's really kind of imaginative.
Why do you suppose Prime Minister Carney, that is, was so cautious then in this initial announcement?
Honestly, I think this is his idea of nation building, and it's a very kind of conservative approach where it's very kind of status quo. I think the big problem is that there is still kind of a disconnect between what people expect of Mark Carney and what his rhetoric led people to expect from the election and what he's actually delivered. He kind of promised a transformation where we're going to do things differently to respond to new circumstances. But literally everything that he's done has been either kind of addressing current problems or implementing kind of policies like tax cuts and austerity that you'd expect from any kind of center-right government over the past 40 years.
I've been curious about that piece as well, where what we heard during the campaign is it seems to be rather different than what we're seeing since Prime Minister Carney took office. And I wonder, even though he had the experience at the Bank of Canada, so maybe arm's length politically, and he's not exactly a political newbie here, but I'm wondering if he may have encountered a situation where he realized how slowly the wheels of government do turn.
I think it's a good idea to look to the Prime Minister's previous experience, and I think that we might have taken the wrong lessons from this, where that he was at the highest levels of his profession and did very well. But at the end of the day, Mark Carney was, and I think he's continuing to act like a bureaucrat. I mean, and I don't say that with any disrespect. I used to be a bureaucrat before I went into academia. I used to work on with the government. And for bureaucrats, for civil servants, for public servants, what you do is you stick to your lane. You basically you've done a good job when you're able to implement something and do it well. And that's what Mark Carney did as the governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. He basically he handled his part of the economy, and he did a very good job of that, but he stayed within his lane. There was no need for kind of a greater vision of anything, because the vision was kind of already given by the prime ministers who were the political leaders, and by the legislation that he had to follow. So right now, this is kind of something new for Mark Carney, and quite honestly, he hasn't shown in the past that that political experience to kind of reach beyond and express that imagination. And maybe we shouldn't have expected it of him.
So how do we get from here, where we're at, to those perhaps more ambitious and important nation-building projects that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, all those ideas, maybe one or two of them came off the top of my head, but most of them are things that I've read from people and, pundits, policymakers, regular Canadians over the past, 6 or 9 months. There's so many good ideas out there of things that we could do, but we're not having that discussion. And so I think what we need to do is we need to have that discussion. Where do we want to go? I mean, because in announcing these programs, the Prime Minister and the Liberals have kind of skipped that step of basically engaging with Canadians and saying, look, we've got all these problems. We've got climate emergency. We've got the authoritarian U.S. We've got basically a digital economy that we've got to do something with. These are 3 existential challenges. What do we do? The Liberals or the Conservatives or the NDP, nobody has a monopoly on good ideas, but we need to have that conversation about what we want to do. And then once we've done that, then you can actually start proposing projects. But right now, they're just proposing projects without a plan.
As we head into the fall session beginning today, Blaine, Pierre Poilievre will be in the House of Commons, so the first time that Prime Minister Carney will face his top political opponent. What are you expecting in this session of Parliament?
It should be, well, I mean, it's always interesting, at least if you like politics. But it's going to be a weird situation because basically the Prime Minister has taken pretty much all of Poilievre's kind of substantive policy agenda. So, you know, I mean, and you can kind of see that where, you know, in his kind of early responses, which is basically like, no, you're not doing it quite right, as opposed to you're going in the absolute wrong direction. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I think it's too bad that we don't have, you know, a strong NDP right now because, like I said kind of before, the more voices we have, you know, pulling at these very, very difficult issues, the better it would be for Canadians.
Blaine, I really appreciate you making time for the show today. Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Blaine Haggart is a professor of political science at Brock University. Joins us to talk about the cautious as opposed to ambitious nation-building projects announced by Prime Minister Carney last week. And it's fair. The criticisms are that what Prime Minister Carney has announced is essentially an acceleration of projects that were already on the books. Now, I think we could, if we're being fair again, applaud anyone who's going to get these projects across the finish line. But it really is, you know, akin to somebody starting on second base and then sliding into third, declaring that they just got a triple, because these projects were already on the books. The first 5 projects through the new Major Projects Office are Phase 2 of LNG Canada in Kitimat, British Columbia, which will double production of liquefied natural gas. The Darlington new nuclear project here in Ontario, which will make small modular reactors. A terminal container project to expand the Port of Montreal. The McIlvenna Bay foreign copper mine project in Saskatchewan, and the expansion of the Red Chris mine in northwestern British Columbia. Those are the projects announced. Again, a more cautious approach to something that could have been really ambitious. I would love to see, and Blaine Haggart alluded to it, which is the high-speed rail corridor, Toronto to Quebec. I would like to see it extended further into southwestern Ontario. I don't think the political will exists for that, but goodness gracious, would I love to see it expanded that far. And remember, even that corridor, yes, announced under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has already had some $4 billion of funding committed to it, and I'm pretty sure that's just for the case study. But I think rail as a nation-building project is a massive opportunity for us. As our guest points out, Blaine Haggart from Brock University, this seems to be, at least what's announced so far, a rolling back of the clock when Canada was all about resource extraction. He thinks, Blaine Haggart does, that we have opportunities in the economies of the future. How do you feel about what you heard from Prime Minister Carney last week? Are these projects announced already ambitious enough? Are we headed in the right direction in resource extraction, or are there other parts of Canada's economy to exploit and or create as this new Liberal government gets its feet beneath it? Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
In announcing these programs, the Prime Minister and the Liberals have kind of skipped that step of basically engaging with Canadians and saying, look, we've got all these problems. What do we do? You know, the Liberals or the Conservatives or the NDP, nobody has a monopoly on good ideas, but we need to have that conversation about what we want to do. And then once we've done that, then you can actually start proposing projects. But right now, they're just proposing projects without a plan.
Blaine Haggart is a professor of political science at Brock University, joins us to talk about the nation-building projects unveiled last week by Prime Minister Carney. In fairness, though, they were unveiled before. He's just promising through the Major Projects Office to get them across the finish line, which is commendable in and of itself, I think, given the pace of work in government these days. So there's that. I think it also by making that announcement last week. However insubstantial some may feel the announcement was, it's very cautious, etc. As I said just a moment ago, critics have already complained that we're really just pushing projects across the finish line. But I think there might have been a political strategy at play here with the announcement last week as we come back to the House of Commons and the fall sitting of Parliament today beginning, because then the Prime Minister can say, oh, I checked this one off my list of promises during the election campaign as well. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's go to the phones and hear from you. Dave is with us this morning. Farwell's Force member number 47. Good morning, Dave.
I know it hurts you to say that.
Why?
Because I said this to you last week. You were loath to give me the number 47.
I don't recall. Why was I loath to give you 40? Because it's my favorite number?
Well, I was one of the first callers on the Monday that you brought up the subject, and you were looking for to fill in numbers 1 to 47.
I didn't think I was going to make it to 47, Dave.
Yeah, but I picked 47, and you had to really pause and think about it.
Well, now we're at 165, so we're doing pretty all right.
Well deserved.
Thank you, sir. So what do you think of Prime Minister Carney's nation-building projects in this session of Parliament that's about to get underway?
Well, I'm going to put a different spin on everything. As you are aware from time to time, but I am acutely aware of it, is that for decades there's been an ongoing dispute and fights between the Conservative Party of Alberta and the Liberal federal government. It's been going on for decades. It really was started with the oil system, but anyway.
Yeah, I believe it started back under Pierre Trudeau, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's been going on for decades. So, anyways, besides all that, besides all the rhetoric you will hear coming out today, being the first session back, and the press looking for sound bites and all the rest of it, what you won't hear is what I heard last week, is that the federal government loan, and this is loans, not grants, not money given, this is loans. But the federal government stepped up and loaned millions of dollars to back up the government of Alberta to double the size of the rail yards north of Edmonton, Alberta. And that's being built now. And that's to double the shipments south to the United States and west to BC and east to Ontario and the eastern provinces. So they are really going like gangbusters in the province of Alberta, and no wonder the Premier of Alberta is grinning from ear to ear. And that's all I have to say, Mike, and congratulations, and have a great day as always.
Thank you, Dave. Good to hear from you. And I couldn't agree more on the ear-to-ear grin on the part of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, because she has seemed quite pleased with the direction that Prime Minister Carney is heading right now. I believe there was some quote along the lines of never having had a better relationship with the Prime Minister prior to now. I think something along those lines, if I remember my reading correctly. You want to talk about loans to another province's projects. How about we just talk about money in general? And one of the, for me, most intriguing things in this session of Parliament is going to be the delivery of that budget and how many tens of billions of dollars by way of deficit that budget shows. And then further to that, how significant will be the cuts? Because there have to be cuts. I mean, the Prime Minister has already signaled asking departments for a 15% reduction in spending over the next 3 years. It begins this year. There are going to have to be cuts. The public sector itself will probably shrink in size, the number of employees working for our federal government, but it has to go a whole heck of a lot deeper than that. So it's going to be a really interesting budget. And furthermore, then, how do you sell a budget that contains significant cuts to the public? I would like to think it's a relatively easy sell right now, because it seems to me that pocketbook issues remain top of mind for Canadians, right? We're all feeling the pinch. And so if I were the federal government, I would position things in that manner. Say something like, look, we know that you're watching every dollar closely. Well, we're doing the same thing. You've tightened your belt. We're tightening ours. That sort of thing. The other interesting dynamic, of course, that's at play here is the federal Liberals have 169 seats in the House of Commons, just shy of a majority. But that still means it is a minority parliament, and the Liberals will require, if my math is correct, 3 votes from somewhere else across the political spectrum to get things done. Could it come from the NDP? You heard our guest Blaine Haggart talk about the NDP not even really being a viable party right now, just 7 seats. You could probably get 3 from there, but there is no formalized coalition or supply and confidence agreement that came about shortly after the last minority parliament led by the Liberals. So without that formalized agreement, you're going to have to find those 3 votes somewhere, either the NDP, the Bloc, or the Conservatives. But the bottom line is there will have to be work done across the aisle, as they say in politics. That's going to be interesting as this fall session of Parliament gets underway as well. All right, we're going to get you to the 570 News Centre for an update. And then in the next 30 minutes, Communitech doubles down on support for startup founders and wants to ensure Canada has a place at the artificial intelligence table. And what is democracy in action in Waterloo Region? You'll find out next on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. If I had a nickel for every time I said democracy on this radio show, I'd have a whole heck of a lot of nickels. We're going to talk about democracy in action right here in our community. It's a new organization, Democracy in Action Waterloo Region. Its founder is Regional Councillor Colleen James, who joins me in studio.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you here.
Nice to see you and have some time to chat.
Absolutely.
Usually we're passing each other. And congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you very much. It's true. We often pass each other at KW Titans games.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's great to get the chance to sit down in studio, have a conversation like this. And when I first heard about Democracy in Action Waterloo Region, the name itself caught my attention. So what are we trying to achieve here, Colleen?
Well, we're trying to showcase and empower individuals and organizations shaping an informed, inclusive, and thriving community. I think we need that. And we often hear from certain voices, but I'm like, there's a lot happening here. Democracy to me I think it's under threat. It's under attack. It's on a thin line. I want to provide a space for there to be resources, for there to be education, for there to be an opportunity to recognize sometimes the people we're not hearing from who are actually part of a engaged community. And this really is about civic engagement, not so much the voting. We know there's the get out to vote. I think that comes later on. But first, we need to really focus on how are we engaging each other in some of the challenges and finding solutions and doing it in a way that we're not working in silos anymore. We're bringing the sectors together.
So is the hope then here, Colleen, to bring and encourage more voices to come to these tables to have these conversations?
Absolutely. That's part of it. People are powerful. People look to government and say, well, government's going to fix it. We don't know the answers to everything. And in the many conversations I have, I firmly believe that the solutions are right around us. And maybe they're not speaking to us as elected officials, but they're in the community doing the work, democratic work. I think, a tangible, Mike, I'm sitting here, you're Farwell for Hire. That's democracy in action. You have an initiative. It has grown. It is engaging community. It is raising awareness. And it's also helping to recognize those as well who not just are trying to overcome and deal with, but also those who support and recognizing that. I mean, it's an example of democracy in action. How we engage. And sometimes it looks like going to government and legislation. Sometimes that engagement is that community building.
So you launch officially with an event on Wednesday. What happens there to really help people become more aware of democracy in action?
Yeah, so that is where we will release, and now it's kind of, fully what democracy is. But more importantly, there are groups and individuals who will be speaking about the work that they are doing, starting locally, building to one of the organizations is expanded globally, and how their work is part of democracy in action. I said this morning, it's democracy in action, but democracy in motion. And I think there's an opportunity for the community to be engaged. There will be an announcement. We've got some partners. I don't do anything alone. There are people who work with, and that is what it's about. And there'll be a community announcement, and we will launch. And, this is an invitation. I think we are in a critical time. Democracy means different things to different people, but at the end of the day, it's about our communities. It's about, human rights, human dignity, but also how do we engage in a way that we're bringing people along.
What does democracy mean or look like to you?
I love to hear from people. I love to see people doing the work. Sometimes, like I said before, we wait for something to happen. And democracy to me is, we know that there's systems, but what are we doing? How do we work around, through, with, and seeing organizations and individuals that are doing that, and they're engaging in ways that, are solving challenges? To me, that's democracy. Yes, there's the voting piece, but, I firmly believe people are good people, but sometimes it's the systems that are problematic. So how do we do this work about engaging communities and bring people together, break those silos down? I keep thinking that there's a few organizations, and all they said to me when I was speaking with them was, everybody's working in different things, and how are we doing things together? So that is one of the things that they've worked hard for and are doing. And then you've got youth. I was just reading the Waterloo Region Community Foundation. I mean, there's positive in there, but when you look at some of the data, especially around youth and mental health and belonging, and, it's something that comes up all of the time. And I think we really need to be paying attention to that. So I've been intentional to make sure that there are young people and post-secondary students and adults and who are part of this. And I'm excited for it, and excited for the announcement I have that's going to come out.
Because you mentioned the Waterloo Region Community Foundation, I will shamelessly self-promote. Eric Avner, the president and CEO, will be on the show this morning around 11:45, a little more than an hour from now, to talk about that vital signs report, what we're seeing, and the challenges that rapid growth in this community are presenting. So that's coming up just after 11:45 this morning as a reminder to you. How, Colleen, do you go about doing this work through Democracy in Action Waterloo Region, breaking down those silos, drawing out those voices that perhaps historically have not been heard? How do you do it?
Yeah, so, the reality is you don't do it alone. This is where you lean on community. There's a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of things that are being done. And really, there needs to be a hub for all of this. And Democracy in Action is saying, you know what? I don't know all the answers. I've got a strong team. They don't know all the answers. But there are people, there are groups, there's information. And I feel like, there's an education piece here. So it is a collective, it's a collaborative, and it's coming together. And again, you don't do it alone. So much of Democracy in Action, you will see as everything develops, it is really a collaborative from an environmental perspective, from a sports. There's democracy in sports. There's democracy in arts and culture. There's democracy in STEM, and it's really saying, okay, how are we going to ensure that this is brought together?
How do, if Colleen, people were more encouraged or enthusiastic about seeking political office, would that be a good byproduct of something like this?
Yeah, I think, I love to see people who are engaged in government and politics. I think this is part of it. When is our civics class? They do something in grade 5. Maybe you have something in high school. I ask many people, do you even know what the Senate does? Most people have no idea. That sober second thought that has to go through Senate. So I think there's something, we don't need to necessarily wait for some of these systems to teach us or educate us. We can do that ourselves. These organizations speaking on Wednesday are doing that themselves as well. And I mean, ultimately, if people are going to be involved and run for office and vote, you really need to know, okay, what is the system we're going to run in and run and be in? And also, where are there ways that, we can work around the system to get better outcomes?
What would you say about your experience running for office for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, it is the experience running is one thing. You're knocking on doors, you're meeting people, you're hearing from people. And I'll tell you, anytime you have something on your show, I hear from people. I said, okay, that's engagement. You're bringing people in. There's a whole journalism element to Democracy in Action, too, that will be launched sooner, because I think that's very key and critical in this point in time. But as for my experience running, I mean, I enjoyed the experience, all the good, the bad. I think, when it comes to systemic change, challenging systems, I mean, we're working in systems that are deeply, deeply, deeply embedded in our society. But I don't necessarily mean that means that's a barrier. You can't change things. So, yeah, I enjoy it. I love the meeting with people and connecting with people and learning more. And as a result of that, I've been able to say, wait a second, there's something we can do differently here. And here we have Democracy in Action.
How can people get involved?
They can follow us on Instagram, Democracy in Action Waterloo Region. Visit our website, democracyinactionwr.ca. You can reach out to me, and you can absolutely come on Wednesday. We have made this barrier-free. I want everybody. This isn't about political stripes or anything. This is about community engagement and what do we need? And the answer is going to come from those who are involved. And it's really calling out for people to get involved with how we move forward and get home first.
That official launch Wednesday, late afternoon, 5 until 7 at the main branch of the Kitchener Public Library on Queen Street North in Kitchener. Looking forward to this. I want to see those silos break down. So let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. And the library is the most democratic place when you think about it. So
absolutely.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thanks very much for what you're doing and for being here.
Yeah.
Colleen James is a regional councillor and the founder of Democracy in Action Waterloo Region. The official launch is Wednesday, 5 until 7 at the main branch of the KPL. Check it out online as well. democracyinactionwr.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I know what you're thinking. Where is that Farwell guy? Did he run away from the studio? No. We were frantically trying to connect with our next guest, the CEO of Communitech, the still relatively newly minted CEO of Communitech, Sheldon McCormick, who has been in the role now for a little better than 4 months. And he says that over his time as CEO so far, he has spent a good deal of time listening to folks over coffee and in boardrooms, at events, hallway chats, etc., and has recognized that there's a great deal of pride attached to Communitech and what it means here in the region of Waterloo. along with that, some frustrations and hard truths have been expressed. And that's where he is looking at a bit of a refreshed strategy for Communitech and its role in Waterloo Region. One of the things that emerged as a perhaps frustration and hard truth is that since COVID, this community has not felt the same, and roles and mandates for organizations like Communitech have blurred. I can't help but go back to that. Since COVID, the community hasn't felt the same. Raise your hand if you have felt that very same thing. The number of times in recent weeks that COVID has come up as a reference point to back in COVID or remember during the pandemic, it just, my goodness, the change I would not have expected. I remember when we were talking in the early days of the pandemic, and we knew that this represented some sort of shift. I remember thinking in those early days that I wasn't sure I would still be here, quite frankly, to notice the shift. It would be that far down the road. Well, here we are, just a few years removed, and it has had a significant impact. As we welcome the CEO of Communitech, Sheldon McCormick, to the show. Sheldon, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am very well. Fall is probably one of the most beautiful times of the year in our community, so it seems to have kicked off, even though we've got some summer temperatures.
Yeah, we'll enjoy the warmth this week, especially me, because I'm a summer guy, but I'm with you. Fall is a beautiful time, lots of energy in the community, and I know that you've spent your first several months, Sheldon, as CEO at Communitech, kind of taking the temperature. Where do you feel we are at as a community today through the chats that you've had, and perhaps more to the point, how Communitech fits into this community?
Well, I think we have a lot to be very excited about. I think we've got incredible community. We probably haven't been doing enough to showcase it, and tell the story of it to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world. But at this point in time, having spent the summer meeting with our tech leaders, our political leaders, our academic institutions, one thing's very clear to me, which is that we have an incredibly diverse tech ecosystem and an incredible depth of talent. And that's ultimately such an asset for us to build off of.
We've long talked about the role of tech and startups in this community. And I wonder, it's gone well beyond its days of infancy. There's no question about that. Where are we headed in this region, Sheldon, when it comes to maintaining our global competitiveness in tech?
Well, I think there's three things that we have here in the region that are incredibly unique. Number one, we've got anchor institutions, academic institutions. Take the University of Waterloo as an example. It's graduating 10,000 engineering students a year. You can't really find many places in the world that can speak to a number like that. Then you also have anchor companies, private sector companies like OpenText as an example. OpenText's got thousands of employees HQ'd here in Kitchener-Waterloo, and it's a company that's one of the largest enterprise software companies in the entire world, based here. 35 years of compounding growth. And then you also have community organizations like Communitech that are representing all of the startups and early-stage companies, scale-ups, as well as the tech employees. So between world-class academic institutions, major private sector players like OpenText, and then organizations like Communitech, that's a real depth and strength. And I think we've got to work together to kind of usher in the next era of tech success for the community.
So as you embark on this refreshed strategy for Communitech, where are you headed?
Well, I've been saying we're going back to what worked, but adapted for what's next. We're now in the AI era, and so that gives us lots of opportunities to go back to a recipe that we had at Communitech, 10 or 15 years ago, but to adapt it, right, for that new era. So you're going to see us focused on, first and foremost, community activation and connection, just making sure that we're bringing people together, getting them out across the community, brushing shoulders and enjoying each other's company. I think that's something we haven't fully recovered from since COVID. So some of the basics of activating the community is first and foremost. And then the second thing we're going to do is focus on technology, right? So tech enablement, focused on figuring out who is at the frontier of our community with respect to AI adoption, and distill that and find a way to showcase it and to share it across all the different companies that we have. So in summary, we're going back to what's in our name, which is community and tech.
How do we seize on those opportunities that exist in AI?
I think we have a collaborative DNA in this region, and so I think we should probably lean into that. We've got some pretty interesting initiatives being cooked up here with a variety of community organizations, and our universities are working together to find ways to connect the demand for AI adoption within our small and medium-sized businesses across the region to the innovation capacity that we have locally. So that's one of the big focus areas. I think in the age of AI, one of the questions I'm asking myself is, how do we really activate our community? We've got this distinct opportunity in Waterloo to leverage all the great entrepreneurs and engineers that we have. How do we get them building new products and new technologies that can be bought, by the local small and medium-sized businesses that have always kind of been the backbone of our economy?
Sheldon, I appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Sheldon McCormick is the CEO of Communitech, joining us to talk about a refresh in Communitech's strategy, which really goes back to its roots in its name. Community and tech. Put it together and you get Communitech's refreshed strategy, which is going to double down on founders in our local startup community and ensure Canada's place. It'll start here in the region, or it can start here in the region, but in this future of artificial intelligence, which we hear so much about. And we've also heard an awful lot about our tech sector in general, our knowledge economy. It's nothing new anymore. And I think really what we need to move into is our 2.0 version of this. Maybe it's version 3.0 by now. I'm not certain because it's not my sector, but I recognize that we still have tremendous opportunity through that sector still today, and Communitech hopes to and plans to, with this refreshed strategy, usher that into the future. A break, an update from the 570 News Center, and then This Week in Music History coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio. Bet you didn't know the lyrics to this one either. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Womp bom balloon bom 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 to the boot, oh rude, 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 to the boot, oh rude. Oh womp bom balloon bom 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 bom. I got a girl named Sue.
Oh, the lyrics, but the lyrics of Little Richard's Tutti Frutti, which we will get to as we embark on another trip down a musical memory lane. Monday mornings, 11 a.m., our good friend Brian Allison, musicologist, joins us for This Week in Music History. Don't forget the Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and you can learn a whole lot more about what we talk about today and then some. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
Let's begin where the show began today, if we could, with This Week in Music History. In fact, on this very day, Steve Miller and his band had a #1 hit with The Joker, but you wouldn't have expected that hit to be in 1990.
Well, because it was a #1 hit for the second time, one of those times when a song came back and made another appearance on the charts, and this time also at #1. So many people remember that the song The Joker by the Steve Miller Band was a huge hit, and it hit #1 in the USA and North America in 1974. Big hit, probably Steve Miller's signature song. I mean, everybody knows The Joker, right? But then 16 years later, in 1990, it made a #1 appearance on the charts in the UK after it was used in a Levi's advertising campaign on the television and a commercial, and people got hold of the song again, and it went back to #1. And it was one of those rare times where a song went to #1 twice, but this time on both sides of the Atlantic, and it set a record for longest gap between a transatlantic chart topper. 16 years between the time it was number one in the U.S. and time it was number one in the U.K. So pretty awesome for Steve Miller.
I love it. And yes, everybody does know the Joker, but I still to this day do not have any idea what the Pompatus of Love is, Brian.
There's some strange lyrics in it, yeah. There's some folks have tried to break that down and talk about, what that might have mean. I think I did see an interview once where Steve Miller kind of just said, don't read too much into it. It's a lyric in a rock song. We're not that deep.
I like it. Okay. How, Brian, on This Week in 1967, did the Doors get themselves banned from the Ed Sullivan Show?
Well, this is one of those stories that's gone down in legendary status and sort of, set the tone for what the Doors' career was going to be all about. So, of course, 1967, they had one of their biggest hits, which was Light My Fire. And Ed Sullivan was a traditional, let's get this band on the show because they've got a number one single. The kids will want to see this. So they signed them for a number of appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show. And the first one, they were going to perform Light My Fire. Prior to the show, the production manager met backstage with the band, including Jim Morrison, and said, look, here's the thing. You cannot say the word higher on national television. So your song contains the line, girl, we couldn't get much higher. You can't say that. So we'd like you not to say it. We'd like you to make a change to that lyric and say, girl, we couldn't get much better. And Morrison said, all right, fine, we'll do that. They talked about it. The Stones had done it with a lyric on the Ed Sullivan Show. They changed Let's Spend the Night Together to Let's Spend Some Time Together. So they kind of reluctantly agreed. During the taping, which is a live taping, of course, Jim Morrison decided, yeah, you know what? I'm singing the original lyric. It's my song. We're saying we're going to play it like it was written. And they did. They said the word higher on national television. And after the show, the word is that the production crew came back and met with the band and said, we had booked you on 3 more appearances. You'll never do the Ed Sullivan Show again. And Morrison famously responded, hey, man, we just did the Ed Sullivan Show. So that was it. And they did not go back. Just to be clear, they did not make another appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. They were banned.
All right, from one TV show to another. This week in 1975, Saturday, Night.
Wow, yeah. How did that hit with such a bomb? And it's hard to believe that's 50 years ago. But
crazy.
Yeah, this was the Bay City Rollers making their U.S. television debut on a show that was actually called Saturday Night Variety Show. And then they scored the number one hit with Saturday Night Live, which was released following January. Within months, pretty much the entire globe was enraptured with Roller Mania, and teenage girls wearing tartan was the fashion of the day for sure in 1975. So 50 years ago, you would have walked down the street seen a lot of girls wearing tartan because the Bay City Rollers were so huge.
And
that song has gone down in legendary status. I think Saturday night gets played everywhere.
Absolutely, it has. The only place we don't play it is in Sudbury because then it's a Sudbury Saturday night with Stompin' Tom when we go up for Sudbury Wolves games.
True enough. Yeah. And that's Canadian content too, so
exactly.
It's a priority.
On This Week in 1983, Brian, we had what I might describe as the Lone Ranger without his mask in rock and roll history.
It happened, and even the group said it would never happen. So this was the day, September 18th, 1983, that Kiss went on MTV, and they appeared for the first time in public without their iconic makeup. And they had, had a career since the early 70s and were arguably one of the biggest bands in the world by about 1977, 78. Kiss was everywhere. I mean, they had merchandised themselves and sold a ton of records, and, were voted America's favorite band in 1977. They were huge. By the time the 80s came around, the fandom was kind of waning a little bit. They were not selling out tours. Merchandising sales were down. I think, people were becoming a little bit tired of Kiss. So they said, well, what can we do to shake this up? And they decided, to remove the one thing that sort of set them apart from everybody else, which was the iconic face paint. So they did. They took the makeup off. They appeared on MTV and to promote their album in 1983, which was called Lick It Up. And it worked. It went on to become a great seller. Even the record that had been released before that, Creatures of the Night, was re-released with a new cover where they weren't wearing makeup. And it did very well in sales, too. So it kind of revitalized Kiss's career. They would return to the makeup, of course. In 1996, they did a worldwide reunion with the original lineup, put the face paint back on and the costumes and the whole show, and went out and had a very, very successful reunion tour. So, but yeah, it was. I remember that day. I remember watching it when they first took the makeup off. I remember thinking, wow, that's what they look like? You know, all this time we were used to seeing them with this face paint, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah, incredible stuff for sure, and definitely a memorable moment in music history. So I'm still trying to get my head around, Brian, that in 1967, you couldn't say higher on the Ed Sullivan Show. And I'm wondering, like, do you think that in 2025 on AM radio, we could get away with sharing the original lyrics to Tutti Frutti? Like, what do you think would happen if we said that on the air? If you want me to say them, I will say them because I know them. I have them in front of me. Okay. Something you think we can get through? I mean, I find it, you know, it's not conspicuous. There's some definite sexual connotation there, but I mean, by today's standards, it's nothing. Well, that's what. Okay, I'm feeling similarly. Let's allow this to marinate for just a moment, and I think. I mean, unless somebody charges through this studio door and forbids me from doing it, I think we will actually dive into this, okay? So we're going to give people a warning that the next segment will contain song lyrics that may be offensive. Correct. This is your parental advisory sticker on the old CD, okay? Perfect. All right. Brian Allison is our musicologist who joins us Monday mornings at 11 for This Week in Music History. Brace yourself because I'm doing it, darn it. I am going to do it. You think Tutti Frutti was just a fun, uplifting, foot-stomping, toe-tapping song? You ain't heard nothing yet, but you'll hear it after this on The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Monday morning at 11, Brian Allison, musicologist, joins us for This Week in Music History. There is a Facebook page of the same name. Check out Brian's page, This Week in Music History, and you'll get more information on the tidbits we talk about and even more from there. We started the segment today with Little Richard's Tutti Frutti from back in 1955. I mean, how much more harmless can a song be? Right, Brian? Tutti Frutti. It's like eating candy or something. Well, I mean, there was definitely some suggestive lyrics in it. I mean, I know a girl named Sue. She knows just what to do. There's not really, too much ambiguity there in terms of what he was talking about. Good golly, Miss Molly sure liked the ball was another song that Little Richard had put out. So he was rarely very subtle in his lyrics. But I mean, that was what made rock and roll interesting to young people in the beginning, in the 50s, because it was rebellious and different from what their parents were listening to. And when you start Tutti Frutti with a wop bop a loo bop a lop bam boom, like you've got everybody's attention. It was just iconic. I mean, kids just went crazy for it. It was just what they needed at that time. Teenagers really have to remember the post-war teenagers were just sort of invented in the 50s. It was a new social phenomenon, and they wanted their own identity, and they wanted their own music, and they wanted it to be loud and rebellious and not what their parents were into, and they got it with Little Richard. So, yeah, it was September 14th, 70 years ago, 1955, that he got into a recording studio. And you have to remember, it was also pretty outstanding that Little Richard was even allowed to record music in the 50s. We're talking about a black man. We're talking about a black man who was not very subtle about his own sexuality. So the fact that he was able to record music, it's pretty amazing in that day and age. So they were doing this recording session. Things weren't going very well. They decided to take a break. Him and his producer went next door to an inn where there was a piano. Richard started mucking around on the piano and came up with a very lewd version of the song that became Tutti Frutti. And with only 15 minutes left in the session, they went back to the studio. They cleaned up the lyrics a little bit. He added the iconic a wop bop a loo bop a lop bam boom, and thus was born Tutti Frutti. But the original lyrics that he had written for it were, quite bawdy, barely conspicuously, in terms of homosexual content, and definitely would not have been allowed to be on the air in 1955.
So I know a girl named Sue. She knows just what to do. Ain't nothing compared to how the lyrics for Tutti Frutti were first created in that bar next to the recording studio.
Not even close, yeah. So are we going to read the...
We're going to do it.
lyrics?
Well, you're going to do it, so I can always just blame... No, I'm kidding. Yes, with my permission and the parental advisory, go for it, Brian.
Okay, well, the original lyric read, quote, unquote, Tutti Frutti, good booty. If it don't fit, don't force it. You can grease it, make it easy. That was the original lyric that he wrote for the song and sang. And the producer in the studio sort of said, I don't think we're going to get away with that. Can we maybe revise this a little bit? And that's when he came up with, the part about, I know a girl named Sue, she knows just what to do, and some other bits. So it was sanitized a wee bit, but back in the day, that was pretty suggestive stuff.
Certainly was. Okay, let's get into some of those that we lost this week in music history, including in 1973, Graham Parsons.
Yeah, Graham Parsons, I mean, it was a very sad loss because he was a very talented guy, very eccentric musician, songwriter. He was with the Byrds, he was with the Flying Burrito Brothers, so two really big bands that he did a lot of work with. And he died under very mysterious circumstances in Joshua Tree, California. His death was initially attributed to heart failure, but was later determined to be an overdose of drugs and alcohol, and he was in that time during a period of quite excessive drug and alcohol use. But the story doesn't end there. The day after he died, the coffin that was containing his body, along with a hearse, was stolen by his associate manager, a guy named Phil Kaufman, and a former roadie named Michael Martin. So Kaufman and Martin drove the casket to Cap Rock in the middle of the California desert, where they set it on fire, presumably in accordance with what Graham Parsons wanted. He said he wanted to be cremated in the desert. So they were following through on that wish, but they had stolen the body and had stolen the hearse to transport the body and cross state lines in the meantime. So the two were later arrested by police, and what remained of Graham Parsons' body was returned to Louisiana, where it was buried. So it was quite a story back in 1973. I was trying to find some information about what happened to Kaufman and Martin and whether they did any actual jail time for this. Wasn't able to find anything that confirmed that, but it's certainly an interesting story back then.
No question. And this week, Brian, in 1977, in fact, tomorrow, September 16th, 1977, we lost Mark Bolan.
The great Mark Bolan. I mean, this is one artist that I always think does not get enough credit for what he created. So we're talking about a guy who basically created a genre of music in the 70s, which was glam rock. Mark Bolan practically invented that on his own. He was the first guy to come out with sort of flamboyant clothing and feather boas, and he would put glitter on his face and eyeliner. And, in the mid-70s, that was still, that was something that had influenced Bowie and had influenced lots of other artists as well. So he was an incredible person and an incredible musician. Died very tragically in a car crash on September 16th, 1977. With a car driven by his girlfriend at the time, whose name was Gloria Jones. And Gloria Jones has another tie to the pop world as well, which many folks might not be aware of. Were you aware of Gloria Jones?
I was not.
Okay. So she actually wrote a very famous song in 1965, and then re-released it in 76. And then in 1981, it surfaced by another English band, and that song was Tainted Love. That was her song. She wrote it. She recorded it in 65 and then 76. Wasn't too big of a hit back in the day, but then when Soft Cell put it out in 1981, it was a number one hit on both sides of the Atlantic.
Pretty cool.
Very
okay.
Impressive.
And not to be forgotten, it was on This Week in Music History, Brian, that we lost the legendary Paul McCartney, which I'm confused by because I thought we just celebrated his birthday not too long ago.
We did, yeah.
Okay.
But then Paul died on September 17th, or that depends on who you ask. So September 17th, 1969 was the day that the rumored car accident that took the original Paul McCartney's life was said to happen. Apparently he was killed in a car crash. The Beatles and their management replaced him with a lookalike. and the Beatles went on, because this would have been at the height of, Beatles fame, and they didn't want to admit that Paul had died. So, and of course, there's a tremendous amount of folklore about, the hints that the Beatles were leaving along the way to tell the world that, hey, Paul actually died. This is a fake Paul. And all of the album cover art and lyrics and backwards math songs on their records where you can hear John Lennon saying, Paul is dead, Paul is dead. That all came out of this. That started September 17th. So I believe it turned out not to be true. I think Paul McCartney has said that he is alive and well, and that the rumors about his death are greatly exaggerated. So,
one of my favorite stories in music history. It really is. I love it.
It's just achieved, incredible status. And there are still conspiracy theorists out there that still believe that Paul is actually dead, and that the guy who's still pretending to be Paul McCartney is a lookalike.
Well, that guy is still pretty talented, isn't he?
He's doing pretty well for himself.
He is
this year, and is going to be appearing in Hamilton in November, I believe. So
there
maybe
you go.
We get a chance. Maybe if you could get us backstage, we could actually ask Paul. What do you think?
We'll tug at his flesh to make sure it's like not a mask or something like that, right? And yeah, we'll be like Scooby-Doo. We'll
get some fingerprints. Yeah.
Brian, always fun. Thanks for being here this morning.
Always, Mike. And congratulations again. I saw your announcement on the weekend. Fantastic news. All my best to you and Jen.
Thank you very much, my friend. Really appreciate that.
Well done. Cheers.
Be well. Brian Allison, musicologist, joins us every Monday morning at 11. For This Week in Music History, check out his Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. And there's lots there for you to consume, including the week that Paul McCartney allegedly died, September 17th, 1969, at the ripe age of 27. But it turns out that wasn't true. Or was it? Drewe's Views with David Drewe is coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. Stay with us. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now, that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
That is our friend David Drewe, owner, negotiating change, government relations, and stakeholder engagement strategies. David joins us every Monday morning, 11:30, to share his views. Drewe's Views. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mike. We both had life-changing events this weekend.
I didn't know you did. I'm sorry.
You got married, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And I bought a video game.
A video game that changed your life.
Most video games changed my life. Right. I'm very malleable.
Well, congratulations to you then in return.
Thank you.
Let's dive into the issues of the day, one of which we touched on earlier, and it is the list of nation-building projects announced by Prime Minister Carney. Just 5 announced last week, and in fairness, it's more of an acceleration of existing projects than anything new. But what do you make of the list so far?
I think the best joke I saw, I think it was the Beaverton who posted one of their mock headlines saying Mark Carney announces Trans-Canada Highway as one of his 5 projects. But, but the copper mine in BC, it was the CEO of that I heard being interviewed, and he basically said, well, it's quite an honor. We don't know how it will benefit us in any way, but, a lot of things could go wrong in the last year, so we're grateful. In the case of the small modular nuclear plants in Ontario, Stephen Lecce was pretty darn grateful, and he said the big difference is it de-risks it for the ratepayers of Ontario because this is brand new technology, and there might be bugs in the first iteration, so it's really nice that the risk is not entirely landing on Ontario Hydro or whatever we call it nowadays. That's very cool. But I think what everybody should be paying attention to is Danielle Smith.
She loves this, doesn't she?
Even though there's nothing really in it for her. even though. And you got to wonder what that is. And then we started hearing the speculation over the weekend that the next one of the Trudeau-era policies to go will be the emissions cap on oil. And at that point, I just don't know what Liberal in that caucus can sit there and say yay. I do not know how they can, again, contort themselves into a vicious circle where everything they said that was necessary to save the planet and insisted on for years and insulted people who disagreed with them. And now it's the cap on emissions in the oil sands. And the logic behind that Danielle Smith has spoken logically of as well. If we get more oil, we have more need for pipeline. And that is sort of where Mark Carney apparently is coming from, is there's a much better case for the pipeline, which we need if we are producing more oil. It's a little bit of a circular thing, but I think that says a whole lot about the 5 announcements we did get. I'm more interested about the ones that are still coming. And that says something about these first 5. Not that they're not important, not that they're not good, but they are safe. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because this is a brand new office with a CEO who's coming in from outside of government, which is good, I think. But this gives them a chance to stretch their muscles, test what they can get away with, figure out the procedures on these low-risk cases. And then when we get into something like, yes, and we're going to be building an energy and natural resources corridor, then they're really going to need to know what they're doing. So maybe it's good that they're not starting off with the crazy thing where they're going to be fighting with the Indigenous bands across the country on the first round.
You did say that the Liberal caucus, in trying to wrap their head around the lifting of the emissions cap, would be, it's a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle? I want to make sure.
I mean, which? It all depends. Like vicious or virtuous? Well, it's definitely vicious in the sense that I don't know where their values are if they manage to flip-flop on this one as well. But it's virtuous in the sense that they're coming around to like positions that I have held for a long time. So I am a typical Canadian where I hate flip-flops when they flip away from me, but I'm infinitely more forgiving of flip-flops when I can say they came to their senses.
It's flip-flopping your way in this case, it appears. All right, Bonnie Crombie, we hardly knew ye. No, wait, we did, as a mayor of Mississauga, as an MP, but a leader of the Ontario Liberals, not so much.
Didn't have much luck. Started off without a seat, which made it hard for her to build brand from there. We had the election during the Trump time, so Doug Ford benefited the same way Mark Carney did, with all the support floating to the incumbent in the face of the foreign threat. Honestly, I am not a capital L Liberal in any sense, so I can't get into the heads of the delegates, but I've often said I would give a leader a second chance. If all they did was lose one time, I would give them the second chance. I think there's nothing that motivates you to win like losing. And from all the complaints I saw about Bonnie Crombie, they seemed very campaign specific. They did not seem like the complaints that some people are saying about Pierre Poilievre, where when you hear them, you're like, yeah, that's unfixable, if you think they're flaws. But with Bonnie Crombie, everything I heard was very mechanical, very tactical about the last campaign. And to me, that's the best kind of loss, where it was just everything going against us. So I don't know that I would have wanted to vote to boot her, but 57%. And so she just wants to punch Joe Clark in the face right now because he set this precedent. And she initially came out saying she was staying on. And then it was hours after that she announced she'll be resigning. I don't know whether that was a quick, rash decision where she sat down and when the adrenaline wore off, she's like, my God, what did I just do? Or if this was people actually got to her and explained. But that was one of those numbers where you've won that battle, but the war is not over, and you're not going to be getting the chance to fight Doug Ford for quite a while if you with 57%. So do you keep going like John Turner did and keep dealing with these brush fires of or Stockwell Day. You keep dealing with these brush fires, and how will you get treated credibly as a leader of the province potentially if you can't hold your caucus together? So she ended up doing what she had to do. And I'm not saying she deserved to have to be put in that position, but I am just so amazed that for a period of time, she thought she was pushing through.
Love them or lump them, there is one functioning political party in Ontario. There's just one. Doug Ford probably wishes he could call another election tomorrow.
Well, I'm not so sure that we're going to be going the full term this time, Mike. Again, I think that if the numbers are right, there's a whole lot Trump can do. Trump's fading away in the polls for us as a concern right now, but he can roar back quite easily. He's proven he can get our attention when he wants to. Just right now, he's distracted by other things, and that's kind of good for us, maybe? I don't know.
All right. Will that person, that leader, that name be in? Of course it will be. How much of a factor is Donald Trump now that Parliament's back? Are you excited the fall sitting opens today?
I am really kind of excited because this will be the first time that Pierre and Mark have met in the House of Commons for a real session, because as much as, they had question period in that abbreviated couple of weeks after Mark was elected leader before he was elected prime minister, everybody knew that was a temporary thing and there was an election coming immediately. So it was all very immediate day-to-day emergency. So there's no election coming. So what is Pierre Poilievre's tone going to be? Is he going to be like some of the stuff that's been coming out of his mouth for the past couple of weeks has been the stupidest ideas ever. He's just like Trudeau, but worse. I'm sorry. I don't think that sticks with anybody, even his caucus. Like, you can say that he's not perfect. You can say you don't want to vote for him. But to say that the guy who cut the carbon or zeroed the carbon tax is supporting oil, is in favor of, like, all of these things that Mark Carney is doing are things that the Conservatives ran on. You can't say he's worse than Trudeau. You can't. So you need to come up with a way to criticize Mark Carney without losing yourself. And so, when Mark Carney commits to defense spending, the Conservatives can't sit there and say, now we're all of a sudden against defense spending, because the people who vote Conservative will be angered by that. So what they've got to do, for example, with defense spending over this first period is not criticize the government, but set the markers so that a year from now, 2 years from now, they have them on the record as failures. Like, that's very cynical. Maybe it goes well, but it never does go perfectly in government. And their job is to oppose. But that doesn't mean that every day you have to get up and say, whatever's the meanest thing ever. It means that you have to point out the flaws in the government. And so when are you going to deliver on this? It's not that you have to attack today, but you have now laid the groundwork for an expectation, and you can call them liars outside the House. You can't use that in the House because it's unparliamentary, Mike. But you can say you did not keep your word. You promised this. You're just the same old Liberals, all talk and no delivery. But you got to start being patient, and you can't go for the home runs. And Pierre kind of wants to do this right now because he's got that leadership vote coming. So he's playing a little bit more to the base. But you play a little bit too much to the base, it's really easy to lose people. If you're going to keep coming out and saying the stupidest things ever, when you say something smart, you're going to be dismissed.
I look forward to the Poilievre-Carney tete-a-tete, which begins today. Always informative, always fun. Thank you, as always, for being here.
Yay. Thank you, Mike, and congratulations again.
Thank you, and to you as well on your new video game.
Borderlands 4, baby.
David Drewe joins us Monday mornings at 11:30 for Drew's Views. It's part of the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Time for the local business spotlight on 570 News Radio.
Well, you may recall earlier today, one of our guests made reference to the vital signs report just released by the Waterloo Region Community Foundation and the challenges that report shone a light on when it comes to our rapid growth. Eric Avner is the president and CEO with the Waterloo Region Community Foundation, joins us to talk more about it. Eric, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Can you tell us a little more about vital signs and in particular why the focus was on social infrastructure?
Sure. Vital Signs is a community-driven data program. It's managed nationally by Community Foundations of Canada, and it's implemented locally by community foundations like ours, Waterloo Region Community Foundation. And so sometimes this data program goes and looks at a broad swath of issues across the community, a dashboard, or sometimes it takes a deep dive into a particular topic, which is what we did with social infrastructure. I think what we're seeing is that, well, we've adopted social infrastructure as a community foundation a couple years ago, because we were seeing that as the community is growing, we needed to figure out ways to grow community. All these big issues that we're kind of facing now and we're going to continue to face require some kind of social connection and trust. And if we don't invest in those ways to build the connection and trust, we're never going to have that collective will to tackle really thorny, complex issues like homelessness and mental health and climate change and things like that. So this report was really a way for us to know where we stood on social infrastructure, on those shared spaces, shared experiences, shared resources that can enable us to connect in meaningful ways. So like what parts of those are strong and worth celebrating, what parts are more fragile that need some shoring up, or what parts are still missing, and especially for a region our size and one that's going to keep growing to 1 million neighbors over the near future.
Anything in the data, Eric, surprise you or jump out as particularly notable?
Yeah, I guess there were three big themes that were kind of unexpected. Like I knew we were growing, but we've been growing and we've been growing really fast. I think this idea that we are the fastest growing metro, we've been the fastest growing metro area in Canada for the last decade, like growing twice the national rate, like 33% over the past decade. And second, that while we've been growing, we've also been changing, and we're changing fast as well. And we've undergone probably one of the most substantial demographic shifts in the country, with this growth being driven by young adults and newcomers. So we're now the youngest metro in the country. We're a median age of 35, which is 5 years younger than national average. We've added 100,000 immigrants in the last decade. We've doubled a racialized population. So that kind of growth and that kind of change has caused what people are sensing. There's some stresses and there's pressures where what we're seeing now is that 49%, like less than half people in the region report high life satisfaction, which is less than national, 4 points less than national. Only 45% of residents in the region express a strong sense of belonging here, which is below the national average. Our neighborhood satisfaction is below the national average. So I think what we're seeing is that while we're seeing some national or societal trends play out here, they're more pronounced here because of the trajectory of the growth that's been for the past decade. So we've really found this opportunity to be like, hey, this could be an opportunity to take a breath, look at that data, look at those assets, and think about where we can be targeting more investment and attention on that system of social infrastructure. So as we continue to grow and change towards 1 million neighbors, we're going to feel like we really have a community here still.
So if we wanted to get involved and maybe take some action to improve this social infrastructure in our community, Eric, what are some things we could do?
Well, I think the first thing, go to wrcf.ca, because the full copy of the report is there. Jump to the back of it. Like the last section, pages 58 to 70, has like a bunch of examples from across town, across the country, on ways that we could be more connected with neighbors, with our communities, with this place we call home. So that's split into 3 chunks. One's around shared experiences. Like what are those clubs, festivals, activities, events, things that you can do to connect with others? Like go to the Lumen Festival, go to one of the local powwows, even go to Rangers games. I think the idea of connecting with others, there's a lot of examples. There's examples of shared places where we can get together, those main streets, rec centers, community centers, libraries, trails, parks, goes on. And then I think we have a series of shared tools, community guides, community calendars to help people find out what's going on. So I think there's a lot of ideas in there of ways we can connect, but we know that that's only scratching the surface. There's a whole chunk of assets that we didn't even get to mention, but we have a lot of strengths that we know we can build on. We know we have a lot of work to do, but this is a good first step for us to know that where we stand, and then we're going to keep working on this with people and groups and communities across the 3 cities and townships.
It really is a terrific report, Eric, and look forward to the next steps from here. Thanks so much for making time for the show today.
Thank you, and congratulations on your recent nuptials.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Eric Avner is the president and CEO at the Waterloo Region Community Foundation. You may have heard late last week a little bit about that vital signs report and the challenges within our community and its social infrastructure brought on by not just the growth, but the rapid growth we have experienced here in the region of Waterloo, and that life satisfaction metric, lower than national or provincial averages over the last decade. Not just a fast growing, but the fastest growing community in all of Canada. And this isn't your parents' Waterloo region anymore. The median age now is much lower than it's ever been. So the Vital Signs report tries to keep an eye on all of that, offer us suggestions to keep this social infrastructure intact, because we are going to need that cohesion. We are going to need that connectedness as we grow towards 1 million people by 2051. I'll encourage you to check out the website that Eric mentioned, wrcf.ca, wrcf.ca, and see how you can get involved. Eric Avner, the president and CEO of the Waterloo Region Community Foundation, joining us on the Mike Farwell Show.
The local business spotlight, where your business comes first. 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out the side, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
It is your daily opportunity to do that very thing. Talk back to us here on the show. We open up the phone lines for the final 60 minutes of every show so that you can take your chance to weigh in on something maybe you didn't get to weigh in on earlier. We got a little cut short with our Charlie Kirk talk, only could fit in 4 or 5 calls. So if you want to still weigh in on that. Parliament resumes, as we just heard more of with David Drewe a moment ago. And how about that social infrastructure beginning to fray here in the region as we grow so rapidly? Maybe it's one of those things you want to talk more about. Maybe it's something that's going on in your neighborhood. Bottom line is, if it's important to you, it's important to us. And in keeping with tradition on this show, Mondays are for rants and or raves. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you're not. And you just make the phone call and we'll go from there. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's start it off with Paul. Good afternoon, Paul. Rant or rave?
Good afternoon. Okay, last week I had a caller, I'm not going to name him. He suggested that he could educate me on electric vehicles. He considered himself an expert, having owned one for about a year and a half or so. He says that he's saving over $4,800 a year over the cost of operating his Jeep. So that'd be a savings of about $92 a week. If his savings are that high, he must be putting a lot of miles on every day.
Well, don't forget oil changes and maintenance.
Yeah, an extra wear and tear on the suspension for the weight of the battery. So I looked up the plug-in hybrid vehicle that he has just to see how it was. Find it kind of hard to believe his savings because the vehicle has a range of a whopping 61 kilometers on electric. It then takes a charging time of 6.5 hours using a level 2 charger. It's one of those slow chargers that you might see around town in parking lots and whatnot. But, of course, there's the fast chargers, the level 3 chargers. They can charge up to 80% in only 38 minutes. Of course, at 80%, that means your range is now only 49 kilometers instead of 61.
Okay, so
Or you
Paul,
can
just
charge, you can charge it at home. Yeah,
I know you hate when I interrupt you, but I just is the point then, Paul, that you don't think the savings realized on electric vehicles are worthwhile or even accurate?
He is full of it.
Okay. Okay.
Because, supposing I wanted to head to the cottage for the weekend, it's 300 kilometers. The first leg, 61 kilometers, then try and find a fast charging station.
Well, but it's a hybrid, so then you'll just use the gasoline, right?
Exactly.
I got you.
He's going to drive 61 kilometers, and he's going to drive the rest of it on gasoline, and there goes the savings.
I got you. Okay, so it's not. See how we can work it right into the point. I understand that Paul was upset, thinking that the numbers may have been a little bit skewed when we were talking about the electric vehicle and the dropping of mandates, electric vehicles and dropping of mandates last week. Look, I spoke to, just coincidentally, another friend on the weekend. We ran into one another at the Belmont Festival on Saturday afternoon, and he was raving about his electric vehicle as well. Says it's the best purchase he ever made. There was a $1,200 upgrade for the charger at home, but he's saving all this money on all of these other ways. And I do absolutely subscribe to the idea that you will save money. It's the upfront cost that you will eventually recoup, but that upfront cost is still coming out of your wallet at the moment. That's a hard one for a lot of people. And I'm not convinced on the whole range thing either. I still have that range anxiety. My buddy told me he can stop at a gas station, a service station, an en route for an 80% charge in 18 minutes. By the time he uses the washroom and gets a cup of coffee, the vehicle is charged. If that particular charging station is functioning at the time, because we hear a lot about these being broken, not operating when you get to them. But anyway, it's imperfect, I think, still technology, but many have embraced it. Grant, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Still good day for yourself, right? You're gonna be on top of the world forever now, right?
I am on top of the world forever. Yes, sir.
And hopefully your wife will get you to do some meditation to calm you down.
I've not been fired up all day, Grant. Why do I need to calm down? Maybe you need to calm down.
No, because I know throughout the years, you're riled up. But that's good.
Okay, maybe she likes me a little feisty, Grant.
Well, your body doesn't.
You're worried about my heart, my blood pressure, all those things.
Oh yeah, I want you around much longer.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to do my best to stick around.
I'm not too sure this is the way that you pronounce this lady. She's always on, I think, CNN at nighttime. Amanda Hour?
Sorry, I don't watch CNN.
Oh, okay, yeah. She had, one of her guests was Martin Luther King's son, and then a lady that was in the Hamas
the Hamas terrorist organization?
Yes. Well, she was a hostage.
She was a hostage. Okay. Yes. And what did they talk about, Grant?
Oh, she has a movie out describing her ordeal. Her name is Latia. Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting listening to this young lady.
I have no doubt that it was. You know, there is still some quality news magazine, long-form journalism type programming being done. And on that note, if I can just say, speaking of journalism, and one of Canada's finest in Beverly Thompson, we learned, passed away on the weekend at the far too young age of 61. Just awful to hear. Cancer, almost a third of her life, a little more than a third, 23 years battling cancer, and lost that battle over the weekend. Should make a note and pass along condolences about that as well. Kyle, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
We should start talking about diesel motors because those are the best ones you can get.
I loved my diesel. If I could have found what was going wrong, some sort of phantom power draw on my old V-Dub, I'd still be driving the thing.
They don't die. I mean, I know that guys can get some vehicles can get over 1 million kilometers on an engine. But I just want to quickly call just to congratulate you on your weekend, on your wedding. So congratulations, Mike.
Kyle, thank you for that. You know what's really strange is I had a dream about you.
Oh God.
I know, and it was so funny because you were being really obnoxious. And then I'm like, but this doesn't sound like the Kyle that I know. And so we're having this conversation, and it was kind of like being on one of those game shows where, we're talking, but we can't see each other. And then I come around the other side of the wall and I see you, and you've got this long hair, and you look like one of the guys out of, I don't know, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a good stoner movie, You were Spicoli. And I'm like, but who was it? It wasn't you, but it was supposed to be you, and you were being really obnoxious. But I don't think it was you, because I've seen you, and you don't have long hair like that.
I used to when I was in high school. I looked like that. Back in grade 10, I got a photo still of my passport back in the day. That
Maybe I met you, the high school version. Were you a jerk in high school?
No, not really. I just say to myself, played hockey. That was about it, right? But hey, you know what? I might be the obnoxious guy this weekend because my cousin's getting married. So we'll see what happens this wedding, right? So and then next week I'm off to Europe for 2.5 weeks. So there you go, Mike. Anyways, thanks a lot, my friend. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kyle. You too. Appreciate you not being obnoxious today. Mark, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. A couple of quick things for you.
Yes, sir.
First of all, congratulations to you and your new wife.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Secondly, go Rangers, go.
It is already that week. Can you believe it? We're like 4 sleeps away.
I'm looking so forward to it, Mike.
That's pretty good.
Okay, man.
All right, Mark. Have a great afternoon.
You too, bud.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. It is Rant or Rave. Maybe you want to rave about the Kitchener Rangers and the season starting on Friday. Maybe you want to rant about something else. Phone lines are open during Talkback, the Rant or Rave edition here on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Here is something I find very interesting. And the timing could not be more coincidental. I think it is just that, a coincidence, but perhaps a happy coincidence for Cambridge Mayor Jan Liggett, who has announced a rescheduled date for her See Me, Hear Me summit in the city. You might remember when this summit was first proposed, and the keynote speaker was to be Michael Schellenberger, who is a somewhat controversial American speaker. He advocates against the woke left, for example, and it drew this idea of the summit a good deal of criticism within the community. But Mayor Liggett insisted this is just about opening up a dialogue, particularly when we look at ways to help our loved ones obtain the necessary treatment for their mental health and or substance use disorder. So the controversy was there. I don't think that's why the summit was postponed. However, in the days after Charlie Kirk's assassination and all of the conversation we've been having around listening to one another, truly listening to one another without being dismissive of that other, no matter how unpleasant or unsavory we find their views to be, they do have the freedom of speech and expression to hold those views, express those views, just like we have the freedom to ignore and avoid those views altogether. But just as we're having these broader conversations about the level of discourse, or quite frankly, the lack thereof in our communities, our inability to listen, our insistence on othering the other side, right? It's the radical left. It's the extreme right. If I don't agree with you, I'm just going to put you in that corner over there and dismiss you out of hand. And against that backdrop, we have learned that the See Me, Hear Me summit has been rescheduled for Friday, October the 24th. Now, I don't see Michael Schellenberger's name attached to it this time. However, we are told that the event will feature multiple speakers, including experts from the University of Western Ontario, Grand Families Incorporated, Coping Bereavement Support Group, as well as interactive question and answer sessions, along with engaging panel discussions, bringing together experts and individuals with lived experience. Topics of discussion will include navigating the healthcare systems when lacking capacity, families and physicians' perspective on the Healthcare Consent Act and the Mental Health Act. That gets us towards the idea of mandatory or involuntary treatment, stories of lived experience, grief, loss, and rejuvenation, and grandparents or great-grandparents raising their grandchildren or great-grandchildren when parents lack the capacity due to mental illness or substance use. So again, all of this, it was controversial, particularly because Michael Schellenberger's name was attached to it when it was first announced. It was postponed, and now it's been rescheduled for Friday, October the 24th. And I just find this so interesting because of the timing of it. As we're having these broader conversations in our communities about free speech, the ability to express a contrarian and or unpleasant point of view, and our willingness or unwillingness to listen to that other point of view. So interesting timing for sure. But if you are interested in the See Me, Hear Me Summit, it's coming up on Friday, October the 24th at the Hespeler Arena in Cambridge. When we talked about Charlie Kirk on the show earlier today, and we talked about it in the context of political violence, something we're seeing more of in the United States. Obviously, you'll remember the assassination attempt on Donald Trump during the election campaign, the Minnesota state lawmaker who was also murdered. There has been a recent wave in the United States. And I think the debate or discussion around freedom of speech or the lack of freedom of speech kind of misses the point in all of this. I recognize that on the surface, what we have here is a blatant attempt to silence an other, no question about it. But I believe that our fundamental right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression remains enshrined. That is not under threat, at least not in a grand way at this point. And so if we get too bogged down in that conversation, I worry that we might be missing the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture for me is the fact that Charlie Kirk, whether you loved him or despised him, had a tremendous following in the millions of people. And most of those who were drawn to his message were young men. And I think we have to ask ourselves the question as to why. What is it that has young men in particular feeling so disaffected, so disenfranchised today that they are drawn to a speaker and a message the likes of which Charlie Kirk espoused? I find that to be the fundamental question we have to answer. It probably means asking ourselves some uncomfortable questions, maybe having some uncomfortable conversations, but I really think that's where the real work gets done in all of this. I'll go back to the phones. George is with us. 00 George on the Farwell Force official list. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mike. Perfect segue that you're talking about this. I'm on the phone now. First, I want to say congratulations on your nuptials.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And to answer your question, Mike, I've been following this guy for a while, and he's offering hope. He's offering traditional family values like it used to be in the States. He's offering hope in Christ. Right now, one guy was taken out by a bullet. Mike, I don't know if you've heard, there's a wildfire spread around the world of people turning to Christ, wanting to join the movement, and Turning Point America now is only getting bigger because there's going to be many chapters across the U.S. at different schools, universities, and colleges.
George, appreciate the call and the sentiments. I'm glad somebody with firsthand experience or knowledge of Charlie Kirk's platform and message can weigh in with their thoughts on it, because I have to be honest with you, until he was murdered, I had no idea who Charlie Kirk even was. That's the God's honest truth. And part of that, I think, I mean, we could come up with many reasons. You could call me an ignorant lout if you'd like, but I think one of the reasons is the places that I tend to go for information on the internet or elsewhere, but primarily the internet, the algorithms aren't moving me towards Charlie Kirk. Those algorithms and the big social media platforms, oh boy, tell me they don't have a role in this. We'll continue Rant or Rave on the Mike Farwell Show this afternoon. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Right back to the phones we go on a busy Rant or Rave afternoon. Tom, good afternoon.
How are you, Mr. Mike?
Good, thank you.
Okay, I think Canada should face the fact that don't play these tariff games. The guy wants to take over the country. You keep sending our ministers, and they only talk to janitors or night cleaners. You should face the fact and then act accordingly. But whatever they promise in any throne speech, nothing is going to happen because there is no money. We're headed the other way.
All right, Tom. Listen, you're not going to get any disagreement from me on the financial difficulties that we face. We are in dire financial straits, in my opinion. I keep hearing from too many people for my liking, quite frankly, that, you know, debt isn't necessarily bad. And listen, the deficits are wildly out of control. And I can't imagine any austerity budget that brings the finances back into control. We'll see where it goes. Your cynicism, I suppose, is well placed. Kevin, you're next. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
I have a bit of a rave. I was part of a committee that organized an event this weekend for Kitchener Kids with Cancer, and we had a wonderful first-time MC that came out to help us out. His name was Mike Farwell.
How did he do as a rookie, though? Honestly, Kevin, be honest about this.
He did okay. He put some good stats. He got in and out of his pockets when he needed to, but no, he was good. He was mobile. He was energetic. No, we were happy to have him. And thank you so much, Mike, for doing what you're doing with such a busy schedule and everything that you had going on. I did not know you just got married, so congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, my rave is to you, but my rave is also to the other 1,000 people in the community that decided to join us on the weekend and get us over that hump to push out $122,000 checks. So, again, thank you so much for what you did and for everybody else that attended.
My absolute pleasure, Kevin. Thanks for including me and the work that you all do. I mean, $122,000 just this year. Absolutely incredible stuff. Bravo, sir.
Well, thank you very much. But we don't get there without support from yourself and, again, our committee and our crew and all the volunteers. It was very heartwarming.
We'll make sure we talk about it in advance again next year and have another big year, okay?
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Thanks, Kevin. Good to hear from you.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. It's a long name. The Kitchener Kids, the Run and Walk. Anyway, it's for kids' cancer through the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario, or POGO. The Kitchener Run and Walk for Kids' Cancer, I believe is what we call it. Regardless, as Kevin says, just tremendous. Upwards of 1,000 people at Kiwanis Park on Saturday morning. The work that goes into just getting us to that point is phenomenal. And then the energy in the park, palpable. I believe the 10K, the fastest 10K runner was under 40 minutes. It was pretty incredible stuff. Lots of enthusiastic and energetic people, but the big part was the $122,000 plus raised. And it's been an incredible endeavor over many years now, this annual walk and run for kids' cancer that raises funds to help people in our community dealing with just that awful circumstance where their child has cancer. I met the most lovely family from Moorfield, the Van Stees, and their son Kian, who just rang the bell after, I don't know, he had this necklace on that demonstrated each step along his cancer journey, and that was one heavy necklace. It reminded me of the chains that you see on Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol. Anyway, great job by all, and let's keep up the good work in the community. Ernie, you are next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. First off, congratulations.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's cool. I was just going to say this about the Charlie Kirk thing here. It's been 5 days, I think 5 or 6 days now since the assassination there. And the one thing I just want to say, it speaks volumes a little bit to his following and the people there. There haven't been any riots, Mike, and there's been no cities burned. I think everyone was a bit nervous as to what was going to happen and what was going to come from this. And I just want to, we weren't sure what we were going to be watching on TV the next few days, whether it was going to go crazy insane or any of that stuff, right? So I'm thankful for that, even from my American neighbors here. And I was going to, I've watched quite a few of his clips, and I follow him here and there. And I loved, and he did a one-on-one piece with Bill Maher, and totally two guys that have complete different views from it to the extreme, if you want to say that. And it was so fascinating to me to watch that interview and watch how they could talk, debate, be respectful with each other, even though they made fun of each other and did certain things like that. But that's what this guy was all about, Mike. He was about having debate to people that completely disagreed with his points of view. And he did it in a respectful manner, whether some people can argue that it wasn't always whatever it was. But, I mean, the way that he could handle himself, I'm thankful there's peace. And the way that he did that, that's why I follow him. That's why I was encouraged to see what he could do. I'm like, man, Ernie, help. You got to be a little bit more like that guy. The other thing that I just want to say, too, there's quite a few people here in important positions that are losing their jobs. And I'm just looking at, the professors that are celebrating his death. There's a city councilor in Niagara that just lost her position at a school. She's still a counselor in the Niagara region for her comments celebrating his death. Or I'm not sure exactly, but that was stated there. She lost her position as she was in the public school, too. These are people that we deem to have higher standards for. And these are people that shouldn't be making statements like that. No matter what, if it's left or right, you don't celebrate a death. And the fact that these are people that we put in higher regard, and these comments and these things are happening. I don't know. It's. I want to have more faith in humanity, Mike. You know what I mean? So, Mike, that's all I got to say.
All right, Ernie. Thanks for saying it. I hadn't really paid attention to the absence of riots in response to Charlie Kirk's death, but thank you for pointing that out. Debate. Whatever happened to? Do debate clubs still exist in schools, on post-secondary campuses? I hope so. I'm not sure what's become, though, of good old-fashioned debate, the honest way, if you will. I don't think there is as much room for that as there once was. And that's too bad, because the only way we move forward is through an exchange of ideas and a sharing of ideas. And full stop on this one, and I'm sure it goes without saying. It should go without saying. If we have reached a point in our society where we celebrate the death of someone else, particularly a violent, cowardly death like this one, the coward being the shooter in this case, I start to lose a little bit of hope when it comes to that, because there should be precisely zero celebrating. If I'll just go back to the old adage we all learned from our parents, right? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Your silence can speak for you in this instance, but you don't have to celebrate in any way the death of a husband and a father and another human being, no matter what you thought of his views. That's a tough spot for sure. Rant or Rave continues. Afif, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
All right. And with the Charlie Kirk thing, my sister, my wife actually, she told me, she's like, I've listened. I was like, I don't know who Charlie Kirk is. She's like, I've seen him online, and she's like, even though he was people liked him because he had full-on debates, but people also didn't like him because of his views. So he's kind of half and half. I mean, people liked him because he used to have open debates with everybody. So he used to even at this the Utah one, he asked people to come up and talk to him and ask him questions hard questions that he will answer back. But like when does life begin? So like that type of stuff. But so that's why so he had some bad views, but I still like the guy though.
All right, Afif, and you know what? If that's somebody whose message that you could get behind and you like them for it, totally up to you. Somebody shouldn't die for their beliefs and the views that they expressed, and we really better put a cork in this dike before we end up spiraling, because as we heard in our conversation earlier today, political violence can beget more political violence, and that's not a road that I think any of us want to go down. We continue our conversations here, rant or rave, on the Mike Farwell Show this afternoon. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Mondays, we use our Talkback Hour for ranting and or raving. Kevin called earlier talking about and raving about the incredible event on Saturday morning at Kiwanis Park that saw more than $122,000 raised for the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario, or POGO, in support of families whose children are dealing with cancer. Just a great event, lots of energy and enthusiasm. Earlier, too, last Thursday, there was a great event at the Hacienda in Kitchener in support of Ronald McDonald House Charities, which you probably know, along those same lines as POGO and raising money for families who have a child dealing with cancer. Ronald McDonald House Charities are there for families when they have to travel to an out-of-town, out-of-region hospital. They've got the space and the food and the comfort that they need thanks to those Ronald McDonald houses, and just a great turnout, 150 people or so at the Hacienda. So a little bit of a rave to those organizers as well. And let's hear it for the folks behind the Bestival in Belmont Village, which ran again this weekend. And we've gone for a number of years now. Just a great weekend of entertainment, live music, performances, right out on the streets in Belmont Village. We had some great weather for it, which never hurts, but just a really cool community festival that we all get to enjoy thanks to the hard work of some volunteers. Let's get right back to the phones. Greg, you're next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. Force member 38 here.
Farwell's Force member number 38. Good day, sir.
Well, congrats on your new status.
Thank you.
And any chance there's a post non-bachelor party that maybe we should all know about? I didn't hear of any sort of like send off ahead of time, so just an idea.
Greg, I'm so old. Like, why would I? What do I need that for?
It keeps you young. Okay. Anyhow, we'll work on that. But okay, now just what bugs me is all this electric vehicle stuff. I don't know a whole lot about it, but okay, maybe you can answer this. Say I have A and B cars, everything identical, all paid off, whatever, doesn't matter what they cost. So A equals B, one's gas, one's electric. All right, in gas, I go fill up for $50. I'm sitting in a gas station right now, $137.9. Say $50. What is the full charge of the electric? What's the cost to, say, fill or totally charge an electric?
Pennies on the dollar.
Pennies on the dollar. Okay. Now, this gas price I'm looking at, I think it's loaded with taxes. So if they get to the point where, okay, all that's gone, I think there's a ton of money that's not coming in anymore. And any talk of who's going to get stuck making up that deficit?
If we stop collecting taxes on oil and gas?
Yeah, and go to electric, and it's pennies. Well, then what are they going to do? All of a sudden tax the electricity up to the same level so they get the same money that they're getting now? Or where's that just all of a sudden going to just go away and they're going to be fine with it?
That's a very good question, Greg. I like your thinking on that. It's kind of like the argument that says if speed cameras work as well as we expect them to work and drivers slow down, the speed cameras will stop generating revenue, and then we're paying for something that doesn't have any revenue attached to it. So I think that the short answer would be I don't think gasoline-powered automobiles are going anywhere anytime soon.
probably not in my lifetime, but say if it did get there, like I don't know how much of this $1.37.9 is gas and how much is the true cost of the product itself, just like taxes on cigarettes and alcohol, they're loaded in there.
I'm sure they'll find other things to tax, Greg.
That's the thing. I'm just wondering if they're...
Don't worry about it.
rumblings as to what's going to get socked with it. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's just like you might know.
I do not know, and I shudder to think, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, but like I say, I think this will all be after my time anyways, maybe not yours, but okay, good for now. Take care. All
right, Greg, you too. Good to hear from you. It's an interesting question. Of the questions that I have asked around the electric vehicle industry, the associated mandates, et cetera, that is one that I had not considered. Where goes all of that tax revenue that is collected from our purchases of gasoline? One of the big questions I have had around electric vehicles is in the charging infrastructure. And this just occurred to me a few years ago now when I saw a new gas station being built out on King, not far from Fairway. And then another one not long after one had just opened on Victoria Street. And I know, Victoria, Long Street, lots of gas stations. But in this particular area, I'm thinking within 6 months of each other, gas station opens, then another bigger gas station / convenience store opens. And I just started asking the question, if we're serious about electric vehicles and these mandates that we're going to have in place for them, shouldn't we be building charging stations instead of fuel stations at this point? And I'm not seeing those mass charging stations show up anywhere. So anyway, that was one of the questions I had about it. Speaking of our federal government, back to work today, and I use that term loosely. Like, we get this idea of, when our politicians are in Ottawa, that's when they're working. When they're on break from the House of Commons, they're not working. And I hope anyway, we've done a good enough job on this show over the years to make it clear that work is happening in the home riding or constituency virtually all the time. I see these folks who are elected out at countless events, all hours, all days of the week, etc. It is a very demanding job, and I begrudge them not an iota of the schedule that they keep. But optics, just from the perspective of optics, and I know now I just went into a yeah, but kind of argument, but as we start the fall session and we look at the calendar in the House of Commons, by the end of this year, and I'll remind you that in election years, they are usually the fewest number of days that our federal politicians sit because there was an election. There's the writ gets dropped, there's the election period, et cetera, et cetera. But by the end of this year, we are on pace to have our federal parliamentarians sit for 73 days. 73. That's it. Because you'll remember early in 2025, Parliament was prorogued so that the Liberals could do the reset. Then the election happened. Then there was a very brief sitting. Then there was the summer break. Now we're back for the fall sitting of the House of Commons. 73 days will be the total number of days sat this year by the end of the year, which will be the fewest number since 1937. Almost a century since our federal parliamentarians were in Ottawa for this little time. Again, there's a lot of work that goes on at home in the riding where the MPs were elected, but they got some stuff to do in Ottawa too, and there are some big pieces of legislation that we need to start moving on, not the least of which is these nation-building projects and what they ultimately look like. But that budget, that is going to be a biggie. And remember, the federal Liberals, still in a minority situation, going to need to find 3 votes from either the NDP bloc or Conservatives to move bills through the House of Commons. Should be an interesting and perhaps downright entertaining fall session as Prime Minister Carney and Pierre Poilievre meet in the House of Commons for the first time since Poilievre won that by-election last month in Alberta. All right, that's all the time we have for today, but guess what? We can do it all again tomorrow. I will come back tomorrow morning at 9 if you promise to do the same, okay? My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.